Check your fire, check your fire. I'd like to start off by Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruchakudash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Check Your Fire. And pretty much this comes from the movie Platoon. You had Sergeant Barnes, played by Tom Berenger. And pretty much he was telling the people that were dropping bombs in their area to check their fire because they were dropping bombs too close, and they were endangering, the platoon, the men that were there. And pretty much this lesson comes through the inspiration of a conversation I was having earlier with the elder Bishop Manatazak. And pretty much, we were just talking, just about situations that we're dealing with and things of that nature. And pretty much, like he said, these things, have to be this way so that we don't get, pretty much we don't get beside ourselves. And pretty much when you come into the knowledge, this knowledge puts you mentally in a different place. It puts you in a, in a higher bracket, so to speak, above people of the world. But what happens sometimes with certain individuals, they get too uppity, they get too high-minded, and that's not good either. It's good to have a ruling class mentality, but it has to be checked. So if an individual doesn't check it, and he happens to be a man of the Lord, well, the Lord is going to check it. Whether it be whatever adversity he might go through in his day-to-day life, dealing with his finance, dealing with his car, dealing with his woman, dealing with his family, his job, whatever the case may be. Or it could be something dealing, physically, some type of ailment that will slow him down so he could reflect. So the first precept that I have, which I want to start off with, I wrote down maybe like 4 precepts. We're going to go from there, and then I know there's a whole lot of scriptures dealing with that particular topic, which I can't think of all of them. So I know eventually, the Spirit jump on you brothers to put precepts up. We'll hit some of those, and we'll go as far as the Spirit allows. If the Spirit only wants 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever, or however long the Spirit wanted to go, that's how far we're going to go with it. So the first precept I have, which was the first one that popped in my mind, which actually, Lord's will, I want to go and read a chapter or two of this particular book, because that paints the image of being brought down to a very humble level, and still being, inspired to follow and please the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. So the first precept we have is in 1 Corinthians 8:1. It says, "Now as touching things offered unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge." And this is the point right here, knowledge. Matter of fact, there's a precept there. I think that's for a scripture, right? Just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, that's for a precept. So it says we all have knowledge. Then it says knowledge puffeth up. And this is why it's important, like the scriptures say, to examine thyself, because knowledge puffeth up. Let me see, there's a precept here I don't have on my list. Let me just check that real quick, and then we'll get back into it. And that's why you see a lot of young men coming into this truth. Matter of fact, since the Spirit had me mention that, let me get that other precept. Okay, I got that, but let me get this other precept, and then we can go into that. So the first precept is, let me make sure that it goes with the subject. Yeah, this is good. I'll start at 1. The point is in 3. Romans 14:1. Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations. Right, because like it says in the, I believe it's the next chapter. I believe it's the next chapter over. It says that you that are strong bear the infirmities of the weak. And that's pretty much what you should do. Like the Apostle Paul said, he condescended to men of low degree, and he pretty much said to do that. Sometimes you have to do that. But what happens with certain individuals, they get in a position to where they feel that they don't have to no longer, you know, they feel that they're in such a lofty position that they can't relate to younger men. You know, they're looking down on them, you know, says, oh, I don't want this, you know. I mean, there are levels to this thing, you know, and of course a brother that's been in this thing, you know, for 10, 15 plus years or whatever the case may be, is not gonna for the most part kick it with a brother that just newly came in. But you do have, you know, exceptions to the rules, because you do have some men that come in, even though they're young, they're on a much higher level spiritually, mentally. So it all depends, you know. But you had guys, you know, in the past that would look down on a man because they didn't have rank or whatever the case may be, you know. So if you have someone that has, you know, that's in the faith, that believes in the Lord, but his faith might be weak, don't despise him, but build him up. It says, for one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Right. This is dealing with physically, you know, someone that can eat whatever, you know, as long as it's lawful, and another, you know, brother that might be a little sick will eat herbs, you know, to kind of build itself up. Same thing with the knowledge itself. Some men are able to eat off the whole plate, and some men are still kind of picking around the herbs and the meat, I'm sorry, and the milk, you know, they're still building up. So the one that's able to eat the meat, don't despise the ones that's not eating the meat, and the ones that are eating the herbs, don't despise the ones that are eating the meat, because at the end of the day, we're all a body, right? It says, let not him that eateth despise him that eateth not, right? And let not him which eateth not judge him that eateth, for the Most High hath received them, right? Because at the end of the day, this is the Lord's thing. And this is why the Apostle Paul said, which we're going to get, you know, I will not know the speech of them that are puffed up, but the power. Show me the power in your actions, you know, the things that you do, you know, the mysteries that will reveal to you. Don't give me, you know, don't give me lip, you know, because like the saying goes, action speaks louder than words. And what better way to show your faith, or and to show that the Spirit of the Lord is with you, than by, you know, pronouncing or speaking the things that the Lord gave to you, and break them down so that others can benefit from it. So going back to 1 Corinthians, matter of fact, before we go to 1 Corinthians, matter of fact, let me read it again. 1 Corinthians 8:1. Now as touching things offered unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. And what happens with individuals first coming into this truth, they get a taste of that honey, it gets good to them, and eventually what happens, they end up getting proud, which leads us to 1 Timothy 3:6. When it speaks about men that are put in certain positions, a position of a bishop or a deacon, which would watch over, you know, the particular churches back then. Now, the Apostle Paul told Timothy, you know, I can't think of the exact quote, but don't be too quick. Lay hands suddenly on no man. That's the scripture. I believe that's in one of the either 1st or 2nd Timothy. Lay hands suddenly on no man. In other words, don't be too quick to put a man into a position. They have to be tried first. You know, like I'll give you an example. When we had the school in Connecticut, this is before any, you know, of the elder apostles or any of the other elders from the, you know, the high priests from back then, before they ever even came up to Connecticut, you know, we were having classes, you know, in this one individual's house, and eventually the Spirit blessed us where we were able to get a school. We got a building, we got the school, we had the school set up, And what the individual at the time was, like I said before, the Apostle Tahar and them came up, and any of the other elders, high priests back then, he was the leader of Connecticut at the time, but he really didn't know how to relegate authority, because he would just throw somebody in a position just to fill that position, whether the individual was capable or not. So you can't just throw somebody, a hot body, into a position without knowing that particular individual's intentions, their works, what they're capable of. Because it's not just keeping a seat warm. It's not just a warm body that you just throw in. It's got to be somebody that fits and is able to fulfill that particular office. All right. So when you deal with this, when you first come into this thing, you really can't be put into no position of authority, because you're still a novice, as it says in verse 6, 1 Timothy 3 and 6. Not a novice, least being lifted up with what? Pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Why? Because he became puffed up by the knowledge, and you have a lot of that. And a lot of times that happens because there's nothing there to check him. There's no adversity, whether spiritual or physical. There's nothing there to keep him grounded. There's not an affliction anchor, so to speak, for lack of better words, to keep him from his head getting all puffed up, swole up, and then extolled to the clouds, which the Lord hates. That he hates a proud look. He hates somebody that's proud, so on and so forth. So that's why it says that knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. Now what is charity? Charity is love. Love of the brothers, the true love. And the true love is shown by what? By the keeping of the commandments of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. As Yahushai said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Which is what? To love the Lord thy power with all thy heart, mind, and soul. Which means what? You're going to go out and do the work of the Most High and love thy neighbor as thyself. You wouldn't do anything to them that you wouldn't want them to do to you. That's unlawful. All right? So these are all things that are very important. So when we go to 1 Corinthians 13 now, same book, we go to the 13th chapter. Just going to go straight to the point. It says, charity suffereth long. Right, because sometimes in this truth, the truth is long suffering. Sometimes you have to deal with each other. You have different spirits that you're dealing with. Brothers sometimes get on your nerves. You love brothers, but sometimes it get on your nerves. Sometimes you want to be around brothers, sometimes you don't want to be around brothers. It all depends on the spirit. And that's a part of the long suffering, dealing with each other's bullshit, pretty much, in so many words. As long as the bullshit, is lawful, of course, and you ain't just totally blatantly going off. But we all have our own individual spirit, that everything that we find pleasing or liking doesn't please everybody else. So as to one brother might say that he loves boxing, another brother might not like it. But when he gets around brothers, he might watch it because it is entertaining, especially when you understand it. But I'm just giving you one example. Some brothers might like to listen to music and other brothers don't. And they might listen to it at their time or their particular type of music that they like. So that's pretty much the dynamic of long suffering, part of long suffering. And long suffering too is sometimes you got to explain something more than once. Like yesterday at the live, like I said, I hope the brother didn't take it the wrong way. He pretty much asked a question out of the norm, that that had nothing to do with the lesson. But like I told him, I said, well, we're going to go into it, but I had to say what I had to say as a disclaimer, because you do have those scoffers that do come on the comment boards to scoff everything that we say. So when someone comes up and you don't recognize their avatar or their name, you have to, you don't know if they're coming in sincerity or if they're coming with guile. All right? So 1 Corinthians 13 and 4, it says charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. You see? So charity is not puffed up. And what happens is, when an individual is not checked, does not go through adversities, there's nothing that goes wrong in his life, that tends to make him proud, especially if he's learning this knowledge and continuously growing in the knowledge, you know, which if you grow in the knowledge, the scriptures say, the greater thou art, the more humble thyself, you know. But at the end of the day, each man is supposed to walk that walk as the Lord gives them, you know, their position. Everybody has a position, and understanding that sometimes, you know, sometimes it's bitter, because you know that there have to be examples of those that fall away. That's part of the bitter, you know, thinking in the back of your mind, hoping that the Lord don't cast you out. But you know, that's a part of this walk. That's it's in the Apocrypha, the condition of the battle. All right, so let's go from there to 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Same book. You got a few good ones in the book of Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, I'll start at 5. Therefore judge nothing before the time. Why? Because the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai said everything in time and judgment. Unto the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness. Right? Because sometimes you have to wait. You might have a spy, but you have to wait for him to pretty much, you know, reveal itself. You might know he's a spy, but you might not have any evidence, but you just know in the spirit, you know, the spirit reveals this guy is a spy, but he hasn't done anything yet, so you have to wait. And when he does something, then the Lord said that's when, you know, the judgment comes out, and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts, and then shall every man have praise of the Most High. Right? Because then you will be what? Tried. And if you're not tried, as the Lord said, those that go without chastening are bastards and not sons. That's why it says, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord. You see? Why? Because when you're chastised of the Lord, or when we're chastised of the Lord, this brings us down. You know, it checks us. It checks that fire. Like Elder Bishop Manatazak was saying, he said, yeah, man, when you go through this shit, you know, through these afflictions and certain things you go through, you know, it keeps your head bowed to the ground. You know, and you don't have time to be puffed up. You know, because you're constantly wondering, what did I do wrong? You know, what is it that I'm doing that's upsetting the Lord? You know, is it just a test? You know, am I doing something that's causing this? You know, just a whole plethora of thoughts that go through your mind. And that is part of what? Self-examination, which a lot of individuals don't do. They think just because the Lord brought them in the truth and that's it. No, that's a very minuscule part of it. And what I mean by that is, it's the endurance to the end. You know, that's when you know for sure that okay, I'm the elect. Once you get to that end, and you cross that finish line, and you in the chariot, then you know for sure you're the elect. All right. It says, "And these things," this is verse 6. "And these things, brethren, I have in a figure transferred to myself and to Apollos for your sakes." Right? Because the things that the Apostle Paul did, the apostles, Yahushai, you know, they did it for the sake of teaching those things that they had to deal with, things that they would go through, teaching them the knowledge, building them up, fortifying their minds for the things that were to come. Whether they understood it at the time or not, that doesn't matter, because eventually once things start popping and happening, you'll be able to, oh, That's why he says so and such and this and that and the other. Like I give an example, there were times when Elder Apostle Torres said certain things, you know, and we were like, oh. But you know, we kept an eye on it because we know that he's a very spiritual man. But at the moment, I'll just speak for myself. At the moment, I might not have seen it the way he saw it. But sure enough, you wait long enough and you be like, oh, that's why he said that. See, and this is why the Yahushua, the apostles and them, they would say certain things to the men back then so that they can be mentally prepared and fortified for the things that were coming. So it says that you might learn in us not to think of men above that which is written. And the main thing that's written is what? That man is vain. Men are wicked. You know? King David said, man at his best state is altogether vanity. So if that's a man at his best state, what do you think a man at his worst state would be? So there's no room for pride. You know, there's no room for being puffed up. You know, when you understand these things and go through the chastisements of the truth, it says that no one of you be puffed up for one against another. And that's the key. That none of you be puffed up one against another. Because this knowledge that we received is not something that we got because we were so smart. Because we were the, you know, above average in school. You know, whatever the top, you know, whatever the top stats are. I don't really know nothing about that, you know. You have top stats, you know, when you go to college and you have your something 0.0 whatever. That's like the highest you can go. It ain't because of any great intelligence that we possessed. It was a gift given to us by Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, who bestowed mercy upon us to give us this. So it goes on to say, for who maketh thee to differ from another? And what hast thou that thou didst not receive? Right. We received this. We didn't just happen to say, you know what, I want to pound of that truth. Let me just go get that and built off it. No. It was something that we received. It was a gift given to us. Now if thou didst receive it, why didst thou glory as if thou hadst not received it? Right. Here it is, you acting like you came up with the truth. You see that in these megalomaniacs. Just by the word megalomaniac, you know who I'm talking about. They'll have you believe that they were back there in 1969, you know, establishing what you see today. Now they were back there in the, you know, in the early 90s, 90, maybe 89, 90, 91, so, you know. But they weren't all the way back there in 1969 when the school first started. Because most of them would have been, you know, would have been very young. Or not even born. Some of them might have been like maybe 2 years old, 3 years old, 1 year old. But they'll have you believe that they was back there in the kitchen, you know, when Elder Albert Bivers was cooking up through the spirit this truth. You know, I say it like that because this is a meal, and this meal took a long time to prep. And if you know anything about cooking, you have the chef and you have something called a sous chef. Now, the job of a chef is to come into a kitchen, whether he's cooking the meal or whether he's doing a show, you know, cooking the meal. His job is just to speak about the meal, break the meal down to you, and grab and just throw it all together. The meat's already cut, the fat is cut off the meat, the onions are already chopped, the garlic is already minced, you know, the rosemary is already, you know, weighed out how much you need. You know, if you're using cumin, you know, the right amount of cumin was set up, some smoked paprika on the side, some black pepper, you know, some Himalayan pink salt, or whatever the recipe calls for. It's all ready. All he has to do is grab and make it. He doesn't have to do any preparation. This is why Yahweh Shai said, other men have labored and you have entered into their labors. So the meal was already prepared. Technically, really, what we're mostly doing is we're mostly just picking off of the food on the table, eating and dishing it out. You know? And especially during the YouTube era, you know, brothers that came in, they pretty much were just picking off of what was already prepared. And then from there they learned how to make the meal. They went and they researched the scriptures. And they said, okay, yep, that's that, yep, this is this, that, yep. You know, and then they reinforced the knowledge. So not only do they know how to cook it, they know how that recipe was created. Because they did what the Church of the Bereans did. But all of that was all through the inspiration of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. See? Not because of any great intelligence that any of us, you know, had or have. Now let's go from there. Let's go to the 18th verse of that same chapter. And the 18th verse says, now some are puffed up as though I would not come to you. Right. And that's what happens. I'll give you a perfect example. Those of you that remember one of the former heads of Chicago, because you had two former heads. Batak, he got the knowledge. He begged me, you know, when you used to be able on YouTube send the private messages. There was times where he would beg me for certain, you know, and you didn't have to beg. All you do is ask. We just give it to you. Baba Kusha, please let me get this. Yeah, brother, here, no problem. You know, but this guy was running top speed, and it got to a point where it started getting to his head. And he thought that he was the shit because he said, oh, I can't learn nothing else from these men. I learned everything I could learn. Now I'm going to teach them. And what happened? He had a demon jump on him that had him say that the book of Revelation 9, that was talking about actual locusts, and I got scriptures to prove it, and this, that, and the other. And then he said, and I'm not budging. So what happened is the spirit jumped on the apostle. I said, okay, yeah, well, tell him, you know, give him his walking papers. Step. You ain't budging. All right, goodbye. And then he was given an opportunity to come back, but he didn't for a long time. Then the spirit, you know, jumped on Elder Apostle Tahar, and we went through a thorough breakdown of Revelation 9, especially the first 8, 9, 10 verses or something like that. And man, by the time that lesson was done, if you couldn't see that was speaking about World War I and the missiles towards the end, then you ain't gonna get it. And I believe that not too long after that, that's when the guy said, okay, but it was too late because he had taken too long. You see? So this is an example, just one small example of many. And you have your YouTube era examples, and you also have your examples before YouTube. See, these guys think that that we just, when YouTube came on, that's when we started teaching. No, we've been witnessing and teaching through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai going all the way back. Elder Pastor goes back to 1985. And he knew about this prior to that because he would see the men on the streets, but it wasn't time for him to come in until 1985. Elder Apostle Gabar and Elder Apostle Rakad, 1990. That's when they first came into the truth. They've been teaching since then. You know, some of us myself, January of 93, some of the other elder bishops, like around 93, 94, and up. So we've seen and witnessed this many times. You know? So this is nothing new to us. And this is why we give admonitions and go through scriptures. And you hear Elder Pastor quote that scripture from time to time. Examine thyself whether thou be in the faith. Because it's very easy for this knowledge to puff you up. Because it says knowledge puffeth up, and it does. You get in, you're like, oh man, and then your head start getting a little swole, and then the Lord said, you know what? We got to deflate this Negro, this Latino, this Judite, this Ephraimite, just a little bit. Go take that needle and burst that balloon he got. Pop, and then you be brought back down to reality. And that's a good thing for those that the Lord loves. Because who the Lord loveth, he chasteneth and rebuketh often. But others, they go unchecked. And then they keep growing and keep growing and keep growing, and they keep getting accolades, and they keep getting puffed up and puffed up and puffed up until they're either totally humbled or destroyed. Like right now, Bishop Nathaniel, he's on the soup, he got humbled a couple of times. But now, after he got better, now he's right back to where he's at 10.0. He's going harder than he ever did. And that could lead to his destruction unless the Lord kick him in the ass again and humble him again, and maybe this time he'll get it. But only the Lord knows. All right, so it goes on to say, but I will come to you shortly, if the Lord will, and will know not the speech of them that are puffed up, but the power. It's in the power. What you're speaking. What you're going into. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to get the proof of it, because not everybody's going to receive the truth. But, you show deeds not by words, but by actions. So the Apostle Paul wanted to see the actions of these individuals, that power. All right, you say that you're endowed by, hey, what happened to Dathan, Corey, and Abiram? They claimed to be, endowed by the Spirit of the Lord. And what happened? They got swallowed up. They got puffed up. They were men of renown. There was like 250 of them. They had the admiration of the congregation. They were known. And then they started coming up against the leadership. And what happened? They got smashed. The true leadership. And they got smashed because they wanted to take the position of Moses and Aaron and them. Which Moses at one time, he said, Lord, what did I do? I mean, I didn't, did I have all these people that you put this such a burden on me? See, these guys, they want the position, but they don't want the responsibility. They want that position, but they don't want the responsibility. Having a top position is more than just, having a top position in name. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. A lot of headaches, a lot of stress, a lot of bullshit that comes with it. But these guys, they see they don't see the stuff that goes on in the background. They just see, what you see when brothers go out to speak and teach and do lessons. You don't see everything else that it takes to get there. And if you were really truly a man of the Lord, you would just wait for the Lord to exalt you in due time. As the scriptures say. I can't think of what that scripture is or how it's worded, but you wait on the Lord will put you in your right place when the right time comes. All right, so verse 20, it says, for the kingdom of the Most High is not in word, but in power. It says, what will ye? Shall I come unto you with a rod, meaning with correction, or in love, and in the spirit of meekness, right? So you want me to get nasty? You want me to rebuke you and curse you the fuck out? Or you want me to come in love? You want me to, entreat you like a father entreats his son? All right, so the other precept I have is Colossians, and then I'll go to the comment board, see what brothers put up. And if not, then we'll close it there. Because I wanted to actually read, either part or the whole book of Job, the first chapter. But you can read that Job 1 and 2. And you can read the whole book of Job for that matter. Because Job, right, the point that the Spirit had brought into my mind is how Job had great riches. He had everything. But one thing he didn't have was a trial of adversity and affliction. You see? Which the Lord already knew that if he would have tried Job, he would have, came through with flying colors. But at the end of the day, it was a bet pretty much that he made with Satan. And Satan said, well, look, does Job, fear thee for nothing? He has, pretty much you gave him everything. Now, if you take your hedge away from him, then he's going to curse you to your face. The Lord took everything from this man. Stripped him bare. Took his children, took his riches, everything. Then, on top of that, when you move on to the next chapter, he touched his flesh with an infirmity. But the Most High said, whatever you do, don't kill him. Which he wouldn't have been able to kill him even if he wanted to. Not that he would want to or do it because, he's under the authority of the Most High. But this is the Most High's movie. And then after all of that, he's sitting there in total misery, wondering, damn, what the hell did I do to deserve this? This is why the rest of the book is about his complaints, to the Most High about, why am I going through this? I've done everything you asked me to. I'm righteous. If the poor needed something, I'm there. If anybody needed something, I was there. I didn't take nobody's goods unrighteously. I didn't, lay with any other man's women. I didn't do this. I didn't make gold, a god. Why am I going through all of these things? But it was all a trial. And that's a very beautiful book. When you going through things, you think you're going through hard times, read the book of Job. And by the time you finish reading it, you'll be looking at, damn, I'm complaining about this little shit, and this man went through all of this. A righteous man too. Hey, heavy. All right, so let's go to Colossians chapter 2, verse 18. Let no man beguile you of your reward in the voluntary humility and worshiping of angels. Yeah, you have individuals that do that. Getting into, all kind of crazy bugged out doctrines, about the spirit world. And, first of all, we could only speculate based off of what the scriptures say about the spirit world. We don't know exactly how the spirit world is. It's so heavy that the angels don't know how the physical world is. They see it, some of them come down to the earth, but there's some angels in the heavens that have never been to the earth. And they desire to do those things and come to the earth to please the Most High. And they've never, achieved that. Just like right now, we've been to the spirit world many times before, but in this world right now, we don't know what it's like in the spirit world. So we really can't speak on those things. But then you have individuals that talk about the spirit world like if they were super experts in that. That's that pseudoscience, science falsely so-called. It says, in the voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he hath not seen. Right, because in this time he hasn't seen that. And why did the Apostle Paul say that? Why could the Apostle Paul make such a statement like this? He is puffed up with his vain mind. He's talking about things that he's never even seen. Why could the Apostle Paul say that? Because the Apostle Paul seen it. He actually seen the spirit world. He actually witnessed the spirit world as he was ascending into heaven, his spirit. And he said he couldn't even explain it into words. But here it is, you got these individuals that never have seen it, but then they're acting and talking like they know all about it. Because Jake got to get super deep, deeper than deep, you know? They need all that extra bullshit. Alright, so it says, intruding into those things which he have not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. Because the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. The flesh is inherently wicked. And that's why it's a constant balance, a battle between the spirit and the flesh. Constantly battling each other for the spirit to keep the flesh in check. You know? And this is what the Apostle Paul was speaking about when you read Romans the 7th and the 8th chapter. To let you know that, look, we're in the flesh. We're trying to live in the spirit as best as possible, but we can't live it perfectly. But blessed be the Most High Yahweh that sent His Son Yahweh Shai, that we can do all these things through Yahweh Shai. Through that grace, we have that door open. Other than that, we ain't got jack. Because you have those that trust in the flesh. And if you trust in the flesh, then you out of there, man. All right, let me see. That's heavy precept right there. I'm gonna read a couple of these precepts. So Romans 14:5, one man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. Yep, that's important. Ecclesiasticus 37:28, for all things are not profitable for all men. Yep. Neither hath he every soul pleasure in everything right, because every brother has a different way that he deals, you know, and there's different things in that man's spirit that he finds pleasurable. Like some brothers might find it pleasurable to sit here at the beach and watch the water. Other brothers will find that a waste of time. They'd rather be in the woods somewhere, or driving, or playing some kind of sports, or working out, or listening to music, something that to them would be a better pastime. You know? So it all depends. You know, you got to find, as long as it's not unlawful, you got to find out what works for you, and you deal with it. You know? But you don't need me to tell you, you know, what you do and what you don't do. That's up to you. You know, between you and Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. Yeah, so pretty much I'm gonna leave it there. You know, I guess the comments stopped coming. You know, brothers was on fire for a minute, and then all of a sudden the comments just stopped. So I'm hoping that it's still live. I mean, it's still moving. So I'm hoping that, you know, that it ain't that, you know, there's a freeze or something on it. So with that, you know, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.